All right. So I'm just going to show you guys how to go now between these parts um, that are planar but paper thin. Show you different ways we can give those things thickness once you have them in place. Clean things up if things are sticking out of the volume in ways you don't want to, or you want to make an alignment. You need to sort of massage this thing a little bit. We can use some scale and scale 1D. Um, and can you guys see my screen all right?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. All right. So here's an example. Let me just, sorry for rotating it here. I was just doing this the other day, and I'll show you some things with the display modes with that here in a few. But what I did is I just took some of these pieces. You don't have to use all the pieces if it's going to clog up the entire volume, right? You can be selective. Oh, sorry. I don't know why this is. Just going to zoom in on this very selectively here. Okay, there we go. But what you can see is I started putting two vertical sort of components in, and then I started spanning between them in different ways with some of these smaller components. Um, and there's a couple of things that are starting to happen here. One is I start to slide some things around so that this thing actually manages to sort of go through both slots. But it's going to stick out in one direction or the other or both. This one's sticking out in one direction or both. It really drives me insane, honestly, that this edge and this edge don't align. So I'm going to show you a few ways you can sort of quickly clean things up. If I wanted to just sort of stretch this so that this edge and this edge align, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say scale. I'm going to type this in the command line. Do you see when I type, it starts to IntelliSense in the command line, and then it starts to give you options based off of SCA, so scale, scale 1D, scale 2D. So scale, by default, will scale everything in X, Y, Z all at the same time, sort of three-dimensional scale. But there is something called scale 1D where we can just scale in one direction. And so I'm going to use scale 1D, select this object, make the scale about point, the base point here. Here's the reference point, and then I can start to stretch it just in that direction of the axis I just drew between the base point and the reference point. And so it's not going to grow outwards in the Y direction, only in the X direction, because that's the sort of direction I picked, and it's only 1D. So then I can snap to that corner and start to align things quickly. So that's one way to begin to sort of make these alignments in ways that you get things, you can start to clean things up, right? Take some artistic license here. You can pick and choose what you actually which components you actually use, and you don't have to use all of them, right? If I used all of these components over here in this 20 by 40 by 40 volume, this thing would start to really fill up. So I'd be selective. I'm not done. I've only used four. I'm going to use more than that. Um, but at the same time, I'm just sort of thinking out loud, like, hey, um, before I go too much further and start to add complexity to this, I'm going to clean up some of the things that I see immediately. Here's another one, right? So I have this component. You see it highlighted magenta, and it's sticking out of the box in two directions. I'm just going to slide this over using the gumball so it's not infringing on that volume. And one of the things I can do here is I could always just trim it away, or I could split it and then maybe turn it upwards or downwards. In fact, it looks like if I split it and then turn it downwards, it could become sort of a structural support that goes down close to the ground. And if it doesn't meet the ground, then I could stretch it with that scale 1D so it does meet the ground. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say split, S-P-L-I-T. Again, I'm just typing this into the command line. And of course, as soon as I say SPL, Rhino says, "Oh, you mean split, right?" And yeah. So I'm going to say, I want to split this, hit enter. I want to use this volume as the cutting object. And so now it's split this between the inside and the outside of the volume, right? All right. Now I can just use the gumball and rotate this if I wanted to, and then just simply move it, MOVE, just typing in the commands, and then snap endpoint to endpoint. And that's actually pretty darn close to touching the ground. That might be good enough for me this morning in this demonstration. All right. And so I might move on and do something similar over here, but in this case, maybe I just want to trim this, right? Um, so in this case, I'll just type in trim. The difference between split and trim, right, is that trim will ask you what the cutting object is. I'm going to select this volume, and then it'll ask for select the object to trim, and the part of the object that's sort of that's being cut, the part that I actually select, so I can select the outside or the inside, will disappear. It'll just be deleted. So trim does like deletes the part away that you're trimming, whereas split, it splits it into two parts, but both remain, and you can use them in different ways. Okay, so they just become two different objects. So trim is like split, but it also deletes part of the object away that you're trimming. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. But I think you'll notice that if you use both and sort of test that out. So let's talk about this gumball that I was just showing, just in case it's a little unclear. I'll start to let's pick on this piece for a minute. Here we go. Okay. I'll select this object, and you can see again that gumball with the arrows and the rotation and scale handles start to pop up, right? These sort of axes. And I can move things much more intuitively or rotate things much more intuitively. If that's not showing up when you select an object, not one or more objects, then what you can do down here, where we toggle ortho and object snaps and things like in Smart Track on, gumball is one of the options. So you can make sure that that's highlighted and toggled on. And then when you select an object, this gumball will appear. So the rotation works similarly. If I have ortho on, I can rotate in this axis or this axis or this axis quite easily, right? And in sort of 90-degree increments. And then from there, it's a matter of placing it where I want. Type in move, snap there, snap here. I don't know if I'd really want to place it there personally, but I can always start there and then using the gumball, slide it over. Yeah, it's getting a little cramped in there, so maybe I would actually not put that in. All right, so that's just how I'm sort of intuitively using gumball to rotate and move things into place. Sometimes then I just type in MOVE if I want to snap from one corner to the next and be very precise. And again, you can use things like scale 1D, in order to sort of stretch things just in one direction in order to make alignments. And of course, feel free to trim and split. All of these things are just relatively simple sort of geometric operations. And the more you just sort of try, fail, try, make it, try, practice it again, the sooner you sort of pick things up and it becomes really intuitive over a couple of days of using it. Okay. Now, trim and split, you can use that and rotate and move and scale. You can use that for surfaces. You can use that with curves, right? So if you're drawing lines, let's say in your site model for a studio, and you can use trim and split, you can use scale, you can use move, just the same way, right? Like this is all of these things are just components to be moved around in a three-dimensional Cartesian space. Rotated, moved, trimmed, split, scale, etc. Okay. So it's the same tools for curves as it is for surfaces. In fact, I can use curves to trim curves. I can use surfaces to trim surfaces. I can use curves to trim surfaces, surfaces to trim curves, right? As long as the sort of operations make sense, it's you can sort of interchange and go back and forth. Okay. All right. So let's now talk about, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this volume away for a minute. Let's talk about how to quickly start to thicken some of these things up. And I'm going to differentiate between some of the horizontal members versus the vertical members, right? Usually in section and architecture, horizontals have to be deeper, much deeper, sometimes than walls and vertical structure. Okay, so reflecting that, let me see here. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. It's over here on the left by the toolbar. I'm trying to sort of shake it. In fact,
Yeah.
I haven't pulled my mouse up. Let me just pull my mouse out. It'll be a lot easier to control this. Silly me. Trying to do this with a control pad. It's such a pain. Wait just 1 minute. There we go. Pull my mouse pad out. All right. In my makeshift office, the sort of fourth unused bedroom in my house. All right, here we go. Okay, so over here along the cursor, we have points, we have curves, we have surfaces, ways to make surfaces, and then again, right next to it, a set of tools where we can edit the surfaces that are made. And we can offset surfaces, right? That's one way to sort of quickly thicken these things up, right? So if I just say offset, just watch what happens, right? I'll go ahead and pick this surface right here, and it's going to say select object to flip the direction. But what's asking for, first of all, do you guys see these white arrows? It's showing me where it's going to make a second surface, the offset of this one, in the direction that's going to make it. And then the distance is right here. I can sort of set that. I'm going to set that to, let's say, um, distance of zero point 0.5 feet, basically 6 inches. And then there's a couple of other options here. One is solid, yes. Okay. By default, yours might say no. So if I say no and I offset this, you can see that I've just offset that surface perfectly in perpendicular. But I can sort of see in between these things, right? I didn't actually create any sides to this and create an actual volume or solid. Okay, so let me try that again. I'll toggle solid on. Okay. Distance is still that uses the last distance I typed in, so zero point 0.5. That's good. I'm going to say solid, yes. And you know what? I'm gonna offset to the other direction, right? So I'm going to say flip all, and you can see that the arrow is flipped to the other direction. I'm going to offset that direction. Now you can see that it is a solid. That's X-ray view. Let me just turn it to shaded view, and you can see, right?
Which tool did you use, Professor, for that under the
Offset,
surface tool?
offset,
Okay.
offset surf, right? So if you
Which
say,
one of those is that? Can you point to
yeah,
it?
offset surf, it is this one. This is
That one.
the tog or the button, the icon. If you're just going to
Okay.
use the what do you call it? The command line, you can just start typing in offset, and you can offset curves, offset surface, offset subds, etc. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Offset surface. I'm going to pick one of these horizontal ones. I'm going to make sure that it's going downwards. And I'm going to say solid yes. And distance, in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to make this thicker. I'm going to make this 1.5 feet, 18 inches or so. Let's see here. Maybe. There we go. Right. So now that's going to be thicker. All right. Um, Sometimes you want to, like, I see this a lot, particularly in houses. Where you basically have a tube and then at the end you have a sort of framed glass wall. Oftentimes what they want to do is make this look like one surface that sort of turns down and goes from sort of roof to wall to floor, in which case they try to keep these closer to the same. So you might actually offset that wall and make it thicker if you want aesthetically. But just know that, in section, we'll talk about this more when we actually look at starting to detail these things. You have structure that spans beams, right? And then oftentimes you have systems that are also running between the floor and the ceiling. And so that really thickens that floor to ceiling sandwich significantly sometimes. So anyway, just some things to think about. But this is fairly abstract, and so I'm just sort of trying to do some rules of thumb. You can pick your own if you'd like, sort of offset thicknesses. With this one, I'll go ahead and go inwards, and I'll do another 6 inch sort of deal here. Yeah, and start to thicken these things up. Right. Okay, it's really driving me crazy that this is actually intersecting. Ooh, right? Oh, it just drives me
The
crazy.
paint.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna select these two things. I'm gonna move this over, right? Now in this case, I'm gonna use the intersection. I'm gonna make sure that intersection uh, uh, toggle for the O snaps on. And I'm just going to move this. I'm just going to say type in MOVE for the move command. I'm going to find where these two things intersect, hopefully. Oof, maybe. Oh, that drives me crazy. I might
How do
just
you
eyeball
fix that?
this at the time. Yeah, let me Let me act a little smarter here. Let's see where near will give me just about anything. Project? No, no. Project. Let's see if it'll find intersections here. For whatever reason, it's not finding my smart track is not finding the intersection even here. That's annoying. It's running along this edge. Huh. Oof. All right. Well, for now, I guess I'll just eyeball it with the with this tool. Um, there's another way of doing this, and that is I could just move it over here and measure that distance and then move it very precisely.
Is there
Um,
a way to snap it so that it'll snap between
that's what I was
that
trying to do.
opening
That's what I was trying
perfectly?
to do, but for whatever reason, it wouldn't find the intersect, which
Like,
is really
I don't
weird.
know where it's at.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but
so if I really wanted to be precise, since it's not picking up this intersect and letting me click here and then click here, snapping, what I would do is I would probably just move this over so it's flush with this edge,
yeah.
and then I would measure and then I would move it back. So I'd say sort of find this hypothetical intersection out here, parent intersection. Then I would measure the distance here. Ugh, it's a real pain in the royal pain in the rump to do this, but whatever. So then I would say, oh, that's 6 feet. So then I would just move these things over 6 feet, and then that would have the precision that I want. So, oh, you want to know how to move something precisely with the gumball?
Like, how do you get it to snap right into where its
So
opening
what I did is I measured
is?
where I have to go over, right? 6 feet,
Yeah,
and then I would move it over 6 feet. You want to see how to do that precisely with the gumball?
I'd
Instead
love
of
it.
having to do the movement. So if I click on that axis when it's highlighted, it'll give me this, and I could say negative
Oh,
6 feet, and it's going to move it over, because the arrow is pointing to the right. So if I said six, it would move it six to the right. So if I say negative six, it
OMG.
moves it to the left. So that's a little easier, right? And then that's actually lined up precisely. All right.
Yeah.
Offset surf. And let's see, I'm going to offset this one downwards. Let's see, how would I do that? Flip ball, distance, I'll say 1 foot. All right. And so you can go ahead and do this as you want, but I highly recommend sort of giving these things thickness. Don't worry about these overlaps too much. We can worry about that later, but for now, it's not necessarily a huge thing to sort of worry about. All right. Interesting. I have this little projection outwards, like it's a balcony or something looking outwards. All right. So what you can see is that I have basically sort of two structural planes. If I pass between them, then it's a matter of, well, I don't really have a way of getting up to here yet or up to here yet, but you don't necessarily have to worry about that. This is a sort of abstract exercise with study models. Then we sort of figure that stuff out. Later on, we'll actually start to design circulation to sort of plug into these things. So with that, I just wanted to show you a few other things that you can do between now and Tuesday as you have time. But it's really important that you do four of these, right? So here's one that's sort of fully baked. I wasn't using the exact same volume parameters as you were. Like I think this was 60 by 60 by 60, which is a lot significantly different than 20 by 40 by 40. But hopefully you just get the gist, right? Like I mean, this is an interesting composition. There's lots of spatial and volumetric variety in here. In fact, it's kind of asking to be like sort of cleaned up and edited and sort of simplified in a lot of ways. But before we get to that next week, I'm going to do a couple of things here. One is I'm going to set this to be an axonometric drawing, a paraline drawing, as opposed to a perspective. Okay. Two, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the sun and start to make a new display mode. And then three, I'm going to go ahead and bring it out as a JPEG or a PNG file, an image file. And then when I have four of those, I can bring them into Illustrator. And I'll show you a few things you can do in Illustrator as you have time between now and Tuesday, if you have time. Okay. So, um, the idea is I'm just going to record this so you can refer back to it as needed later on if you have time. So right now, this is a perspective, right? And I can tell that you guys know the difference between perspective and axons, paraline drawings?
No.
Okay, no worries. All right, so when we see things in perspective, we look at things the way our eyes see them, right? So for instance, things that are closer appear larger and things that are further away appear smaller, right? We have that sort of foreshortening. And two, this is called a two-point perspective because, let me just find my drawing tools here. Here we go. I can draw lines now. Oop. The least intuitive drawing tools in the entire universe are Zoom's annotate tools. Because as I start to draw these edges, they don't remain parallel, even though they're supposed to be parallel in real life, but they actually converge towards two vanishing points, right? So if I start to project all these things this way, I have a vanishing point there. It's the same thing over here. So if I follow this edge and I follow this edge, so the vanishing point's off my screen for this side, by the way, but there would be a point way off into space over here, right? Okay, and so that's how we kind of see anyway, right? Like our when we're looking at something at the oblique, right? Like let's say looking at the corner of a room, um, you begin to see these sort of perspectives. That's how we begin to see things. And so let's see here, a human figure that's this tall might look like, and then the same one, the same person at the same height. Oops, it's really hard to draw, by the way, this mouse. All right, so sorry. Would be smaller. Same person, same height would be smaller. Someone that up here that would be bigger, right? Okay. So that's how we can sort of judge perspective, right? And that's how we, by default, sort of see things three-dimensionally in Rhino, right? It just gives us the perspective view. Just like if we were taking a camera and out and somewhere and sort of selecting what we take a photo of. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yes.
All right, good, good, good. Now if I turn this off of the oblique, let's get inside this thing even. And I start to look at something where I'm looking in along one of the axes of the orthogonals. Then I get a one-point perspective, right? So if I, oh, here, sorry, annotate tools. Let me get my lines out here. So if I start to project these things, they start to go to just one single point out here in space. Oops, that wasn't really in line with anything, right? Okay. So that's an example of a one-point perspective, and this is something I used to have to do in art class a million years ago, draw one-point perspectives. We would sit out in the hallway of the school. There's a bunch of lockers and doorways and look right down a hallway, down its axis and draw it with a one-point perspective and try to sort of see how accurate we can make it, right? So we have one point. Everything else is either vertical or horizontal, right? But everything in that sort of depth axis to our eye, that converges to one point, right? All right, so paraline drawings are different in that I'll show you what these things look like. Da, 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 da. By doing this, right? Like I'm going to go to the viewport label for my perspective viewport. And we've been here before, right? Here's where we can say, do we want to look at something wireframe or shaded, rendered, ghosted, whatever. But if I go a little further down, there's an option here called set view. And you can see that I can look at something in top view, bottom view, left view, right view, front, back, perspective, two-point perspective. and something called isometric. Isometric is what we're going to go for. So I'm going to pick isometric, and then I'll pick one of these, either northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. All right, let's just take a look at what we end up with. I'm just going to zoom in here, right? And now we have an axon drawing, an isometric drawing. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that, and these are usually referred to also as paraline drawings. How do you shade the object planes that we made yesterday? Give me just a second, Jason. I'll address that. Yeah.
A silly question, but
No, 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 it's good. It's good.
uh,
So
I just
w-
couldn't figure that one out.
one of the things that you'll notice here is that all of the edges that are supposed to be parallel are now parallel. They don't actually, there's no perspectival projection. There's no vanishing point. So this is an abstraction, right? This is a measured drawing. Everything's to scale. Um, and all of these things remain parallel. So this is called an axon or isometric drawing, axonometric or isometric. So when I say axon, this is what I mean, right? So everything going in this direction is parallel. They don't converge. Everything in this direction, parallel. Everything remains the same scale. So if it's closer to my eye, like let's say up here, or farther away from my eye, like back here, it doesn't matter. Everything's the same scale. Nothing sort of shortens or gets smaller as it recedes to the background. And verticals remain vertical, right? Now, if I measure these angles right here, let's say off the true horizontal, this is going to be a 30-degree angle, and this is going to be a 30-degree angle. It's a really common isometric drawing type called 30-30, right? Where each of these are 30 degrees off of the horizontal, right? Do you see that? And so that's by default what Rhino does with its isometric views. It's a nice 30-30 isometric. There are 30-60s, right? Where this would be 60 degrees and this would be 30 degrees. There's 45. Oh, let me just redraw that. So I have tick marks in my retinas after all these years of. There are 45 45s that sometimes people do. Yeah. That would basically keep things at a right angle. So it's basically, sometimes you call that a plan oblique, where you just take the floor plan and you twist it 45 degrees and then start to project upwards from it, for walls and things like that. Okay. Okay. So that's an axon, an isometric. And those are really handy, particularly when you're starting to do diagrams and showing these things. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to make these things isometrics. Now, let's go back just one step here. Let's follow up on Jason's question because this is something that I didn't quite follow through on yesterday, I don't think, right? But I've drawn all of these shapes. And again, I pulled out the surface tools, and it's this planar surface tool. So if I click that, planar surfaces, or I believe it's called planar surf is the command if you want to just type it in. I can select one of these closed planar shapes and then fill it in with the surface. And the surface is what I want to use, right? If I have all of these done at the same time, I can select more than one, more of them at once, and then just sort of fill all of them at the same time. Yeah. Okay. That might save you some time, but that's what I'm using, the planar surface command. Then when I place these things over here, then I have surfaces that I can offset as solids like I was doing before. Okay. Okay, so I have an ISO, and look, I'm just going to double check and see which one's the most interesting view, right? So I'm going to go set view, isometric. I could say northeast and check that. And that one looks pretty good. But I can go around and double check all four before I make a final decision. So far, northeast is more interesting than, to me anyway, the northwest. Northwest isn't bad though. Let's see. Southeast. It's kind of a judgment call on your part. Yeah, I kind of like Northeast the best so far. Let's try Southwest and see what we have. Southwest is kind of weird. Yeah, I'll stick with the Northeast one. So I'm just going to say set view, Northeast, right? Zoom in. Try not to rotate my view because this is a perfect 30-30. Okay. All right. And now let's talk about display modes. Okay. And we can also start talking about when we do rendering different render settings. Okay. And then so we'll start to format this so that we
Great.
start to see some light, soft shadows, lines where we want to see lines. Okay. Then when we get looking exactly the way we want, we can export this out as a JPEG or PNG, and I'll bring that into Illustrator, and then we can start to play around in Illustrator with it a bit. Okay. All right. So first of all, again, I'm going to go back to my viewport label and click on that little drop down. And let's just look at what this looks like in rendered mode. Yeah, there we go. All right.
Oh, forget about it.
Yeah, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
There are others that look similar, right? Arctic is a nice one, right? That's sort of out of the box, much softer shadows. I think it turns the sun off. Um, Now, if I go to, I think technical, I get just the lines and hidden lines and everything else, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make your own custom of display modes because I kind of like seeing some of the edges and line work and the renders. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what maybe one of these things looks like, and then I'll show you how I made it. So I have one that I've created my own called AAE 767 demo. We'll turn that on really quickly. It's going to take a minute. Aha. Now it has the best of both worlds, right? You can see that I have edges and curves, and I have um, my rendered view and these shadows as well. Okay, so let me just go back to shaded here. All right, and so I'm going to show you guys, remind you guys again in Windows, Rhino in Windows, you go to Tools, pull down Options, and that brings up a box of options that we'll start to use. For anybody using Rhino for the Mac OS, it'll be right up here where mine says Windows, yours says Rhino.
Yeah.
You go to the preferences, all right? And it'll look differently, but you'll see display modes as one of the options. Okay. So if I go Tools, Options, and down here at the bottom, I see View. And when I click on that to expand it out, then I see display modes. Okay. And you'll see that I have all of these display modes. All of these are just display modes that we were just looking at in the viewport menu, right? So we have wireframe, shaded, rendered, ghosted, X-ray, technical, etc. One of the things I can do is I can go to my display modes and I can see a list of them here. And I'm just going to select technical because that has the parameters I want to play around with line weights. And I'm going to use technical first. I'm just going to make a copy of technical. So I'm going to select it and say copy. Okay. And up here, I'm going to name this something like summer 2025 for my, just so I remember. Okay. All right. And now I'm making a new display mode that'll show up here in my viewport menu later on when I change things. Okay. And right now it's basically just a copy of the technical mode. So let's just test this. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to look over here at my viewport. Oh yeah, and there it is, summer 2025. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to summer 2025. And the reason I'm doing that now is so now when I go back to my settings and start to change things, I can start to see what the changes do in real time as I start to make them and maybe make some decisions here and there. Okay, so Josh, spring break, no, summer 2025. All right. So first and foremost, I'm going to go drill into objects, this objects category where I have points, curves, lines, and clipping planes. We can give it parameters on how to uh, display all of this sort of line work, point work, and curves and everything else. I'm going to go to lines. You can see that technical line type settings, hidden lines, edge lines, silhouette lines, and intersection lines. So we can say use the object's color, or we can just say no, we always want them to be a single color black. I'm just going to use that for each of these. I'm going to make sure that no matter which layer I'm using, and sometimes layers are different colors, but that when I actually want this drawing out, I want all the line work to be black. You could always tone them down and make some of them gray or something like that, right? And then there's something called line width, right? That's line weight. So we can actually give a sort of visual hierarchy to some of these things by actually increasing the line weight. And typically, for a silhouette line, like the lines around the sort of major shapes, we would beef those up a bit. So let's see what happens when I start to do that. You notice how some of those line weights start to get a little, little thicker now? Yeah. Intersection lines, edge lines, right? We can begin to assign a hierarchy to these. And later on, we can even turn the hidden line off if we want, right? We can just set that to, um, I don't know if we can set that to 0 here. There's a way just to turn them off later on. But let's see what it looks like, right? So here I am starting to adjust line weights. All right. And now so that was inside objects lines. Now I'm going to go back out to just this sort of generic summer 2025 settings and start to look at some of these other settings. So it's ground plane settings, like do I want an artificial ground plane? I'll go ahead and leave that on. Shadow on, why not? Shade objects, flat shading. I'm going to say yes, shade objects. Let's try that and see what happens.
Is the sun on right now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Right. So now I'm shading things on. I can use flat shading. Or I can say standard shading. Let's see. So I'm just sort of clicking through and looking at certain things here. Now, what I'm trying to do is turn on some of those rendered settings, right? So let's go to rendered mode. See how I have rendered mode over here? And I'm going to look at its settings and see if I can, what I'm sort of missing here. Advanced. So shade objects, color material, rendering material, advanced texture preview. All right, yeah. And then, so let's go back to summer. I'm just going to go through here and say color material usage. I'm going to say rendering material, advanced texture preview, just like it did in the render settings. Standard shading. All right. Show curves. Here's where we can turn on or turn off like showing curves, showing edges, showing hidden lines. I can turn off the hidden lines if I want. I'll leave them on for right now. I'm not sure how I feel about those. If they lend the sort of drawing a little bit of uh, um credibility, or if they're just kind of in the way and unreadable anyway. Um, but now I'm going to go back through this. I'm going to look at some of these other options. Like grid, I'm just going to leave this the way it is by default. Objects, I'm just going to leave this by default at the moment. Points, I'll leave this at default. Same with all of this, curves and clipping planes. Later, we'll talk about clipping planes next week when we start cutting sections and plans. Shadows, I'm going to turn shadows on. Ah, here we go. Right.
Brilliant.
All right. And I'm just going to leave the rest, I think, the way it is. Other settings, and I'll stick with this for now. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK and sort of look at this. Now, if yours might not show this because I have my sun turned on. Guess what? You know the command to adjust all the sun settings? Anyone want to guess
Oh,
what the command is?
Command S.
No, just sun. I can just
Oh,
type in sun. Right? And it might bring up a box somewhere on your screen or options on the left, or in my case, options on the right, because I have it docked with my layers and properties and everything. But right now I have it turned on. If it's not toggled on, it looks like that, right? You just get soft shadows, as if the sky was very diffuse, cloudy. And so there weren't any direct shadows, but just lots of light bouncing around scattered, right? So if I turn it on, then I start to get some directional light. And then there's something called manual control, where you can actually manually move the azimuth and altitude, right? Or I can turn off manual control and I can be very precise, right? So in this case, this is what gives me that map, and I can say I'm actually in Las Vegas, Nevada. It gives me the latitude and longitude. Latitude is 36.2. So we're in the Pacific time zone. And then I can begin to specify maybe not July 10th, but 6. And let's see, what date is it today? It's the 12th. We're not at the point in the summer where I forget what day of the week it is, right? 2025. Let's do 10:37 a.m. That's what I have on my clock. And so that's what the shadows, they're not crisp, but that's what the how it's starting to cast some shadows on that ground plane. Now I've accidentally rotated my view, right? Uh-oh. And so it's not a true 30/30 anymore. Let me just get this back on the screen here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my viewport label, just like I did before, set view, isometric. I wanted the northeast view. There we are. All right. Now I'm just going to use, if you guys notice, I can zoom in and out dynamically with the scroll bar on the mouse. Um, I can zoom extents and show everything in the model in one window. Or if I want to just sort of draw a box and then zoom in with that box, I can use this sort of magnifying tool with the box. And I can just sort of draw a box around this and it, okay? So just knowing that those things are available to you sometimes is handy. Anyway. All right, so let me just go back and make sure there's nothing else I want to tweak here in my, I went to tools options again, went back to summer 2025. I'm just going to look at everything one more time. Rendering material, just try this out and look at, yeah, no, not so much. Maybe we'll go with white and see what that looks like. Yeah, no. Single color, rendering material, custom material for all objects, customize. We'll just use that. I don't know if that even makes a difference unless you have individual materials set, which we'll talk about later. Got to learn how to walk before we learn how to run. All right, so I'm leaving this up for a moment just so you can sort of see some of the parameters that I have if you need to refer back to this at some point in time. I understand there's a lot of little details, minutia here. And so, but you notice that I'm just out in the sort of overall settings for this new display mode. I've named it. I've made sure the ground plane is on, shadows are cast on it, shade the objects. I'm using a rendered material, an advanced texture preview clicked on, and I'm showing curves, hidden lines, edges, silhouettes, and etc. Um, I could, change all of this stuff and, turn hidden lines off if I want and turn them on and sort of compare, right? And mix and match till I get something that I think is really, really nice. Um, okay. Um, Back over here, really important, I go to objects and drill down to lines. And if I use if I made a copy of the technical display mode, then I get these options. And that's why I wanted to use the technical display mode as the sort of prototype that I copy, because I want to be able to set line weights and line colors for each of these. And the silhouette I've beefed up to 3. Everything else is back down to 1 and hit OK. All right. So once I have this framed, I have the sun exactly where I want it. And um, I'm actually going to change the date to June 21st, which is traditionally the solstice, the longest day of the year, so to say. It's not going to change much, but I'm just going to use that as a sort of baseline, June 21st. December 21st, June 21st. Those are the shortest and longest days of the year, so the sort of two solstices. Um, and then March and September 21st, those are the equinoxes where we have sort of equal bending of these objects. Yeah, no bending.
And the
Yeah.
the objects will pierce right through, like where you did that
Oh,
rectangle
yeah, you
deal,
can
and
fold
then
or
the
trim, right?
small.
You can fold or trim. You can take some artistic license here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're cutting it in half and you're putting one on one side, one
Yeah.
on the other. You're
But
not
keep things
pushing it
orthogonal.
through.
Keep things orthogonal, no curves. Right?
Okay,
Those are the rules. If you need to
the
trim something.
so that beam right there didn't go through. You just cut it in half and put one on one side, one on the other, right?
No, this is just one piece that just sort of cuts through.
It'll cut through that
It'll cut through here
plane.
for now. Yeah, it's just a basic dumb geometry.
Okay,
Yeah, just
sorry.
planar geometry. Yeah, no
All right,
worries.
all right.
No. Good.
I
I
don't
want
know
these questions to come out, right? I think that's helpful. So no bad questions here.
because I'll be like trying to pull it through and it won't go, and then I'll, you know, go nuts for a while and come back to it. Then it'll work.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Um, I think at this point I'm probably ready to. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to change one other thing. Look at one other setting, but then let's bring this out as a JPEG or PNG, and let's that way we have it as an image. Just gonna go here. I'm going to turn off shade objects and see if that brightens things up a little bit. Right. So this is more like Arctic mode. Things are a little brighter, but you're still casting shadows. It's kind of up to you whether you know how much you like. I kind of like the contrast with these a bit. But anyway, some things to consider as you can make your own decisions on this. You know, I think it's important for you to start to develop. Now, I'm showing you some workflows, but I think you're all going to have some nuanced ways that you sort of make these things work for yourself. Okay. So here I have this 30/30 isometric. I'm going to bring an image of this out that I can then publish in a PDF later. Okay. So here's the fun way of doing this. Because I've made the display mode exactly the way I want this to look, I don't need to actually like hit a render button and render this out. I can just basically take a capture of my screen. And there's an easy way to do this in Rhino. If I go to view pull down, capture to file. Now, for those of you on the Mac, this might be in a different place. So let's just look at this.
We
I
got a
believe.
view.
Oh, you do? Okay. And did
Yeah.
you get the capture to
No,
file?
we don't. That's on it on mail. But yeah, we got a view, a menu items. Sure.
You have that capture and then to file in that view pull down?
To clipboard or to file. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you want to go to file. And it brings up a
Okay.
box like this. And it says, well, currently you're looking at the parallel viewport. Yeah, I want to leave that.
Yeah. Looks the
I
same.
turn the grid off, the world axes off, the C-plane axes. I have transparent background on. And so that way you can see that it's projecting shadows onto the ground, but everything's sort of transparent. And then
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
and then it says scale 2. I'm just going to put this as scale. I mean, I can do scale 2. What you can see is that it's giving you by default, I think, hopefully the viewport resolution. In my case, it's 2826 by 1568, which is a decent size. If I want to scale that up and have, twice the resolution, basically four times the amount of information, right? I can say scale to 56, 52, 31, 36. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that and hit OK. And now it's going to give me one more box. It's going to say, what do you want to name this and what kind of file do you want to save? And I'm going to say PNG. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on the desktop and I'm going to call this Axon 01. Okay. And go ahead and save that PNG file. Okay. It might take it a second. Once it's done, it should tell you. Let's see, where's my mouse? Here we go. And because I scaled it twice, basically it's twice the amount of
Uh-huh.
information in the width and twice the information in the height. So it's like four times the amount of information. It sort of exponentially grows. So okay, it says image successfully saved, axon01.png. All right. So I'm just going to quickly save my Rhino file, close this down for a minute. Now I'm going to open up Adobe Illustrator. This is what mine looks like when I first open Adobe Illustrator. So I need to tell it to make a new file. Okay, new file. This is going to ask me a few parameters like the size and the width and the height. Maybe I'll just do 8.5 by 11. So width 8.5, height 8.5. And I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a canvas, a page that's 8.5 by 11. Okay. Now we're just going to skim the surface of Illustrator. If you know Illustrator pretty well, then you're you're golden. But if not, don't worry. There's lots of things to do in Illustrator. But I'm going to show you just the basics. So you can basically place your images, place other things if you have the time, save as a PDF, and then upload it for Tuesday. Okay. So first of all, I have this, and I'm just going to say File pull down, and I want to place an image. So File pull down place. This will allow me to find that image I just made, Axon 01, double click it, sort of so I can place it in here. It'll probably be pretty large. Yeah, it's considerably larger than 8.5 by 11. Holy cow. All right. So with this selected, with the handles on, I'm just going to go ahead and click this free transform tool, and I'm going to go to that corner and I'm just going to hold down the shift key so that I and click and drag. I'm holding down the shift key to keep the proportions constrained, right? So that if I don't hold down the shift key, I might accidentally stretch this in some weird way. I don't want that at all. That would just look terrible. Look at that. Ugh, ugh, right? So I'm just going to undo that. Hold down that shift key. Use this little transform tool. You see the cursor with the little transform box. And I'm going to go to the corner, hold down the shift key, and scale this so that it fits entirely on the page. Okay. Now, you notice I zoomed way out. Okay. I'm going to say Command for the Mac. On the Windows, it's Control, but I can Command dash or minus to zoom out, Command plus on my keyboard to zoom in, and Command 0 to fit the page to my screen. Okay. So if I want to zoom out, Command minus, Command dash up on your top of your keyboard, Command plus to zoom in, or Command 0 to fit the paper to the screen. And there it is, right? I could add text. You see there's a little text thing here. I could say, Northeast or, prototype O1 or whatever. You don't necessarily have to do that. Um, but one thing I did want to show you guys, particularly if you're ready to move forward and go faster, we all go different speeds. So I wanted to sort of, keep everything moving along. What I did in Canvas, let me just show you. I go to the modules, right? So planar compositions, here's the videos that we're doing. I'll post this morning's later after class here on the same page. But you can see that here are the planar composition modeling videos. All the videos from yesterday are uploaded there for your reference. I'll put this morning's on as soon as I can. Um, this is planar composition submission. That's where you can upload your PDF once you've finished these. But what I did is I created a new page called Silhouettes, and I actually have one, two, three, four, five Illustrator files that you can download for your own library. Silhouette packs of people and trees. Okay. So feel free to use those, download them, put them in it's interesting. Like on my system, I just actually have a uh, a folder I call Entourage. Sort of like people, textures, materials, shaders, silhouettes, plants, ground covering, skies, HDRI skies, etc. Here are some of those silhouette files, right? And so I'm going to open some of these up into Illustrator as well and show you how you can use them to actually populate these with some people and trees if you'd like. Okay. So once you have this image that you've published from Rhino, you can bring the image into Illustrator. Illustrator is a good sort of layout tool, right? And I can begin to add things like humans and trees to it. So let me just go ahead and open up a new Illustrator file. I have this one open still, but I'm going to open up one of those silhouette packs. Documents, let's see, list, alphabetical. What is going on here? Entourage. Here we go. Let me turn this back to icon so I can see things. Let's see. Too many files, darn it. Don't know why it's displaying like this. It's kind of dumb that, like, come on, give me a break. Groups of people, groups of people. Let's see. Let's just do,
Yeah, one that has a lot, so I can see how you pick out
yeah,
one.
yep. No, exactly. Here we go. People silhouette. Let's just do that one. Okay, this
Thanks.
is this is one of them I give you, right? So what you'll notice when you open this file up in Illustrator that each of these people are individual, just sort of vector files. So I'm just going to copy, select all, just move my cursor over and select all of them at once and hit Command C or Control C to copy. And then go back to this one and hit Control V or Command V to paste. Now, you'll notice that these things aren't to scale, right? Like I would consider this to be much larger than what these people show. So I'm going to need to shrink these people down. I'm going to scale them all at once. and get them all to the exact scale that I want, rather than doing that individually and then they're not quite all to the right scale. Then go ahead and scale them one time, make sure that they're all set here. Move them down here, and then I can start to click and place them in various ways. I can have maybe a few people here together. This is where you can be like Bob Ross, give this person a
Yeah.
friend and have this person doing yoga against the wall or whatever.
Happy.
Happy little trees. And
Yeah.
you'll notice that I have some trees and plants as well. So I'll open up that pack here in a minute. A couple of things here. One, and you might encounter this. Let me go ahead and try to I'll place a person in here in a place where I might actually have to do some editing, right? Like let's see here. I have somebody back here on this plane, in which case their feet would be cut off by this, right? Like we wouldn't see their feet, right? It gets a little
Yeah.
tricky, but there's a way to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a shape called a mask. And a mask is basically a shape that I can overlay on top of this to show only the part of this silhouette that actually is inside the mask. And then it masks out everything that's out. Okay, so it's a little weird, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own little shape here. I'm going to use the pen tool. I'm just going to go and click, 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 click. And I'm going to try to go back to that last one and end it. All
That
right.
made a mask.
Not yet, but this is going to be our mask.
Okay, so you
This is where
just
we're going to
drew
use
a
the mask.
shape with the pen tool, and
Yeah,
now it's sitting
exactly.
on top of
In the
Aaron.
shape of in the location of where I want that mask to be. Now I'm going to
Okay.
select the mask object that I made and the silhouette, holding down the shift key. I can select both. And I'm going to go to object. And this is weird, right? And I'm going to say, let's see, clipping mask. And make, right? So I go objects, pull down, clipping mask, make. You see how I'm just sort of keeping my cursor and all that stuff up so you can see where that's going. Okay, so when I do make, then suddenly it's just showing that first of all, the mask disappears.
Where did the
It's
make? What happened? I was taking a
Yeah, so I
note.
went object,
Yeah.
clipping mask, make. And then suddenly the mask disappears. It just becomes a little transparent window. And
Yeah.
inside of it, I can see the silhouette and everything that I masked on the outside doesn't show up anymore, right? So that's how you can begin to occlude things if you want. If you
Okay.
can't figure that out, then just don't put someone in that situation. But that's how you can do that if you run into that situation. I'll just place a few more people here. Place some folks out here and around. Let's have some pe folks using this shade. These two people, maybe they're walking around down here. Let's put somebody up here and somebody else up there.
And
Um
Illustrator's gonna treat all these as individuals as long as they're vectors. But if you paste it in like some Google thing you found, it's gonna treat it as one image, and you're gonna be dragging around this big
yeah,
bunch of
that's
stuff,
why I
right?
gave you these that are already silhouetted and individual vectors for you to use in Illustrator.
Okay.
So
So
if I'm once I'm
vector
done
we
with
want to
that,
use.
oops. Once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and just delete all these others away. I'm not going to use them. Let's open up one of those tree packs and see what we have here. Open. And if you have your own, if you've been doing this for a while, feel free to use your own. It's not lost on me that some of you might have been doing this anyway, from time to time. And someone with a bachelor's of landscape architecture probably has some tree packs somewhere. Let's see. I'm gonna keep mine as silhouettes. Let's see. Tree silhouette copy. Yeah, let's use this one. Why not? I think this is one of the ones I included for you. So you can see I just have again some trees that are silhouettes. Um, just copy. Oops. I'll turn that one off. All right, let's see. Paste this one in. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's really kind of dark, actually. I don't, but if I put these behind, again, I might have to use that mask. If I want this tree to appear like it's behind this stuff, then I need to sort of make a mask for it to mask it out. or I can place it next to it or in front. And I don't want to sort of use the same tree over and over again, right? It just looks like you've copied and pasted the same darn tree silhouette. So, you might try to mix this up a little bit. Let's bring a few of these in. And also think about sometimes they differ in size. So let's see here. Oh, I guess maybe it didn't copy and paste the way I wanted it to. Here we go. Let's see. I tried this one, this one. Let's maybe use a couple of these. I'm just going to select a few here. Copy and paste. This one, let's make this one a little taller. It looks like it could be a little taller and skinnier. Little happy little tree. Let's give it a friend. Okay. Let's place a couple of trees here and there. I don't want to necessarily block a lot of the architecture. Um, this one I think I'm just going to get rid of. And then I might actually put some people, closer to the trees, just sort of. Another thing you can do, let's make this one slender, but let's make it a little taller. There we go. Oh yeah. Look at that. Let's say I put it here. Sometimes you look at this and go, man, the silhouettes are like really dark and they stand out maybe a little more than I want, right? I can do several things here. One is I can always select these and you see how it says it's telling me that there's a black fill.
Yeah.
I can always go to colors over here and turn it to a gray fill and gray them out a little bit, right? See how that works? Or if I select them, then you might notice up here there's a opacity setting on mine. I can just turn down the opacity a little bit and just dull them out. And then I can still see some of the things that are happening behind them, right? So you can begin to mix and match. And again, think about look at it, look critically at it and say, well, maybe this is just still too distracting. Maybe I just move it over here. So it's not like interfering with all this stuff. Maybe I move this guy out of the way so it's not even back behind there. I'll start to put this guy somewhere else. There we go. Start layering some trees and plantings. Um, Eventually when we start looking at plans and sections, we'll use the same sort of ordering system that we used on the building to sort of determine where we might plant trees in a sort of urban grid along the streets. And I think, again, my take on this is we definitely have a water budget for trees if we use them strategically to increase the streetscape, the value of property, increasing the value, the sort of quality of life for anybody that's downtown, et cetera, right? So that's my take on things. And I think the city agrees with me because they're trying to plant more trees over the next 10 years. So anyway,
Uh, I have a quick question.
sure.
So if there's like a person behind the tree,
Yeah.
how can I select the person behind the tree?
Ah, very good question, right? So you either have to move the tree out of the way, or here's another thing. There are layers in Illustrator. If you don't necessarily see this layers box or this layers icon, let me show you a few things here. This works for all the Adobe Creative Suite. If you don't see a box over here that you need, go to the Windows pull down, and then you can toggle them on here. So I can toggle on layers here, and it brings it up. What you can see is that each of these things look like they're on their own layers. And so I could begin to lock, let's say, the trees, and then suddenly I can select what's beyond because the tree layer is locked. So what's behind it.
Oh,
I
okay.
see, I see.
Now,
Okay.
if you have certain things that are, let's say, how do I put this? Let me add a tree here in the back. Let me push this tree. Oops, sorry. Let me unlock these trees since I locked them. Oopsie. Let me put this tree right here, right? Okay. What I can do is I can say, well, this tree technically would be behind the building. I can right click. I think I can right click. And you see the menu that pops up. Oftentimes you'll have something called arrange. You can say send to back or bring to front. And that's sort of treating each of these objects on their own piece of trace paper. And you can decide what's in the front, what's in the back, or start seeing things forward or backwards. Um, but what's interesting is that since all of these things are on their own different layers, um, it's only going to work on things that are on their own layers. So if I wanted this tree, which is this layer right here, to be back behind this, I would need to drag that layer down underneath, and now suddenly it's occluded by the building. Okay.
Oh, so that way I
So
don't have to make a whole clipping mask and
so that's
everything.
how
I
you can get
see.
behind a clipping mask if you have something that's not necessarily in the foreground, but then in the background, right? Like a tree has, you can do that with the trees, I think, quite easily. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Okay. And it's really just a sort of function of layer management and then yeah. So anyway, from here I'm ready to, publish this out. Um, I don't really have a preference per se. But as you can see, I have this and it's taking up a substantial portion of 1/8 by 11. I could either then try to sort of group all this together and scale it and put it in one quadrant and then just sort of publish four of these in one page. Or I could start to make three more pages here in Illustrator. Now, let me just show you quickly how you can do that in Illustrator if that's the way you want to go, right? If I just sort of zoom out again using that command minus and zoom out, um, here along the top, I'm trying to sort of move things away from my Zoom interface here. I can go to Document Setup, and I can say Edit Artboards, and I can draw another piece of paper that's 8.5 uh, by 11. If it's not quite 11, you can look at the dimensions here and go, okay, it needs to be exactly 11, 8.5 by 11. And now I have another page, and I can then, take the next one and put it on this page by simply going File, Place, and placing the next PNG in, and then starting to add silhouettes, right? Or, I can just, make this smaller. I can just select everything all at once. Let me make sure all of my layers are unlocked. So I'm selecting everything. Okay, good. And what I can do is I can just sort of group everything together. If I go to Object, Group is one of the options. The keyboard shortcut is either Control G or Command G, depending on which operating system you're using. And then I can just sort of scale everything all at once, I believe. And I want to hold down the Shift key to sort of make sure it scales, um, make sure that it scales, uh, what do you say, proportionally. Then I have room for another one and another one and another one, right? So if I have all of these PNGs, I can place them, shrink them down, compose them on the board in a 2 by 2 grid, and then I can bring in the silhouettes, scale them, and start to populate everything with silhouettes. So, and again, this is icing on the cake, adding some trees and people. Some of you are probably almost there or ready already to do that. Some of you might get there by Tuesday. Some of you might not quite get there by Tuesday. That's fine. On Tuesday, I, I want to at least see four PNGs arranged on a page, upload it, so then we can sort of take things to the next steps. Okay. But this is part of the next step. So if you're working ahead, you can go ahead and take care of this. And if everybody gets there, that's even better. We'll be ahead of schedule. Okay. All right. Is there a way to get it to scale automatically to fill the page automatically
Yeah,
in
just
here?
to pop it so that it looks cool
Yeah,
on the one page, and you just go wham, check it out. And
not totally. Like here, if I go File, Place, and let me just place the image again in here on this other artboard. I'm just going to pop it here.
yeah,
It's going to be huge. Look, I'm zooming out. One of the
yeah,
things I can do with my interface here is you can notice that the width is 78.5 inches by 43.5556 inches. Nice round number, by the way. Um, and if I say, well, let's use the top left as a reference point because that's actually in the document. I could say, let's just make this thing 11 inches across. And then it'll say, okay, it's going to be 11, proportionally, it's going to be 11 inches by 6.1033 inches. And now it fits perfectly. But there's no like magic number that sort of, or bullet, so to say, like magic tool that sort of just fills in the
just
the
sit
image,
to
fills in the
window.
page. Yeah.
Like I think GIMP had that. Like just fit it to the window we have.
And part of this is because I made this thing super large. Like I made it twice as big as it
Okay.
really needed to be. But I think still it'll probably be though it might come out larger than the 8.5 by 11. In which case you just need to sort of uh, scale it. There's no like magic way of doing that though, unfortunately.
Thanks.
Yeah, no I guess automated way of doing that I'm aware of anyway. All right, so it's 11:07. Class goes to 11:35. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then there's just some work time for you guys to try things out. I can answer more questions, etc. So let me just go ahead and stop sharing and stop recording.